Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Football Fanalist live stream presented by Fantasy Data. Billy Musio here alongside Bradley Stalder, and we are ready for another data-packed episode. Tonight, we'll be analyzing the top 5 finishes for quarterbacks and running backs from the 2020 season and labeling them as a buy or sell for the 2021 season. But before we start, how's your week, Bradley? Anything fun and exciting in the Stalder house?
Yeah, Billy, I'm on a well-deserved spring break right now. So actually, this is interrupting my break. And as you can tell, this is a different venue for my streaming. So this is my dad's office, actually. We're visiting my parents. And, so I got double vaccinated thanks to being a teacher. And now I get to spend time with my family, especially my extended family. Some of them I haven't seen in like 2 years. And my 11-month-old daughter, she was able to meet 3 great grandparents yesterday and today. So that's a great, awesome, family memory. So it's been a special time. And when I'm done with tonight's live stream, I think I'm going to go upstairs and play some sheep's head. So, but instead, next week, I should be in my new studio in Michigan and have a few surprises. So.
Wait, what is sheep's? I don't even know what that is.
She said is a card game, kind of like euchre, but a little more complicated and has dimes and nickels. I'll teach you how to play when you come visit.
Look at that. You learn something every day. So you gave me a sneak peek into your studio that you have coming up here, and I'm excited for you, buddy. Like, setting up a man cave is like one of the best activities that we can do as men. It's just so fulfilling. Like, I remember like purchasing things for the back here, and my wife's like, "Don't you think it's overkill?" I'm like, "No, not at all. Like, we're gonna pack this thing full," and it's just so much fun. So I'm excited to see you start your adventure in your man cave down there. For me, I didn't do much this week. I played golf. I flew the plane a couple times, and I did about 5 best ball drafts. And I got sucked into 2 more dynasty leagues. Like, we always say we're going to cut back, but we never do. And these 2, though, are going to keep me occupied for some time. So they're both Paragon 32-team dynasty leagues on MFL. And I've told you about these leagues before. I mean, they're crazy. You start 11 on offense, 11 on defense, 53-man rosters. The startup draft is 62 rounds long. Then we do the rookie draft. Cuts are the same day as the NFL. It's just tons of fun. And I tried a different strategy this time around. I traded back and did it again and again and loaded up on like mid-round talent, stacking multiple picks per round in like rounds like 4 through 8. So I'm excited. I'm not really a patient person, so I've been sitting here kind of like waiting for picks to come, and it's kind of hard watching players just fly off the board that I like, but I think it's going to pan out once we hit these rounds. And I have 4 2022 round 2s in one of these leagues and 3 in another. And so I think this team's going to be built for the future. I'm really excited about it. And I think that's enough about my crazy dynasty leagues.
Well, Billy, 1 second, if I can, just like what is even the strategy going into a crazy league like that? Like, I can't even fathom. I already have difficulty with our single player 32 team league. Like, what's the strategy when you go into a crazy, setup like that?
Well, that's the beauty about these leagues is there's just so many strategies. Where IDP players are weighted very heavily. So if you wanted to, you can attack the defensive side of the ball, or you can attack the offensive side of the ball. The way the scoring situated, you really want some solid wide receivers and running backs and tight ends, and then from there you could dig in pretty early to defensive end and linebacker. You can get away with the average cornerback because good cornerbacks don't get targeted, right? They're so it's the cornerbacks that get burnt that are getting targeted every game that really add up a lot of points, honestly. So a lot of different strategies. I prefer to play the draft board and to trade a lot during these drafts, so that way I can just accumulate picks and go from there. And over the turn, picks become more valuable. So I think that my strategy is always trade back.
I love it. All right. We're excited for tonight's live stream because it, as you mentioned earlier, it does feature top PPR performances from both quarterbacks and wide receivers. So we'll buy or sell each of these players returning on a ceiling week for 2021. So we're going to look at individual week scores going into this live stream. And I'll share my screen just to get us started. And we're going to, let's see here, share screen with the tab. And here we go. We're going to look at here the top 5 quarterbacks. Can you see that okay, Billy?
I can't see anything.
Okay. Is it loading yet? Maybe.
No, I could pull it up though. 1 second.
Okay.
You can keep talking. I'll pull it up.
All right, I will stop my shared screen, and we're just going to continue anyways. The first quarterback and the highest scoring quarterback in individual week last season during 2020 should be no surprise, and that's Patrick Mahomes. And I think he's a very easy buy. We'll begin with a layup here, right? Mahomes had the highest scoring quarterback game of all season, week 3 against Baltimore. And not only did he have the number 1 week, he also had the 13th, 32nd, 34th, and 46th highest week. I don't think I need to justify him as a repeat for this coming year, being a top 5 quarterback. He's gone as high as the 1.01 FFPC and only as low as the 3.03. And that's looking at about 17,000 mock drafts, according to Fantasy Football Calculator. So I think that this is a lock. He's going to produce a top 5 week. And I think that he's the consensus number 1 overall quarterback. So he's going to put up points.
There we go. It took me a minute to get that loaded. Apologize for the delay. Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer here. Where'd it go? Oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. Okay, here we go. So I think it's a no-brainer. Mahomes is hands down, the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football and in real football right now. I mean, he's led the way with the number 1 most fantasy points by any quarterback last year, and he actually had 5 of the top 50 best performances. He ended up finishing the year second in yardage with all quarterbacks, 4,337. Who's 4th in touchdowns with 38. He averaged the 4th most pass attempts per game in the league with 39.1. And I don't need to dive into all the analytics here or the advanced efficiency metrics to tell you that Mahomes is a top 5 fantasy production. So easy buy for me. And I think that that's a smash no-brainer.
I would say the only knock against Mahomes, and we'll probably touch on this later on in the offseason, was that there were about 15 passes that should have been intercepted for him that weren't this past season. There was a montage put on Twitter about all of the passes that were just off the hands of a defensive back, and it could have gone either way. So we'll see if he regresses when it comes to interceptions. But I mean, that's not really going to make a significant impact. If anything, we've seen the Jameis Winston effect where interceptions may actually force him to throw more. Number 2, Billy, we're looking at number 2, and that's Dak Prescott. You want to talk to us about Dak Prescott, whether he's a buy or sell?
Oh, buy. I think Dak Prescott leads the league in passing yards in 2021. I mean, as long as he is playing all 16 games, if his injury progresses well and he's starting week 1. I mean, he was very well on his way to doing it in 2020 before any injury derailed his campaign. I mean, Dak actually had 2 of the top 8 fantasy performances of the position, despite only playing 5 games. I mean, extrapolated, he was on track for nearly 6,000 yards. That's insane. And just how insane is that? Watson led the league in passing with 4,801 yards. He was on track for 1,200 more yards than Watson. I love me some Dak Prescott. I'm buying him as a top 5 fantasy quarterback back in 2021 with a ceiling play. Oh, love it.
I know you love it, but I'm going to sell. And
come on.
I know I love Prescott. I love his game. The injuries do have me a little concerned, but we've heard nothing but positivity out of Jerry Jones. We shouldn't expect anything else. He just signed his quarterback to a 4-year extension. And yes, Dak did have 2 of the top 8 quarterback scoring weeks, despite only playing 5 games. But the reason I'm taking my stance here is because there's been a big change this offseason for the Dallas Cowboys, and that's been an improved defense, at least on paper. The reason why the Cowboys and Dak had such a high passing volume was that their defense was historically bad, like one of the worst defenses of all time, and especially at the beginning of the season. The Cowboys just signed a new defensive tackle, Carlos Watkins, who had a really high grade in tackling for Houston last season. They just signed a new defensive end, Brent Urban from Chicago, who had a great rush defense grade. They signed a new edge, Terrell Basham, a very high rush defensive grade from the Jets. And Keanu Neal and DeMonte Kazee and Malik Hooker, all safeties and very high defensive grades as well. And Jaron Kearse from Detroit as well. So these are players that are the Cowboys recognized that one of the weaknesses was the defense, and they addressed it pretty seriously this offseason by filling in and plugging holes. So look, I think Dak Prescott's going to be a great fantasy asset, but I'm tempering the ceiling of Dak, and that's why I'm selling him as he's not going to have a top 5 week going in for 2021.
See, I think as long as this O-line is fixed, because that's where the issue arose last year, is after Dak went down, the O-line started just falling apart. They were in shambles, and they lost the running game. They lost protection across the board. So I think that if this O-line is fixed and back to even near the ceiling of the O-line the Dallas Cowboys have had, I mean, the weapons are here. You have Amari Cooper. You have CeeDee Lamb. You still have, a shell form of Zeke. Tony Pollard showed up last year. And then you still have Michael Gallup. So I think all the pieces are here. I mean, this is one of the best wide receiver trios in the league. And we've seen what Dak Prescott has been able to do. And I just think that he's going to come back with a vengeance. He wants to prove that last year's was not a fluke, that was him. It wasn't just the fact they're playing from behind, or they were, playing because they had a bad defense. So I have to say I disagree, brother. I am buying his ceiling here.
I just don't believe they're going to have like 40 to 39 games or 49 to 38 shootouts at the volume in which will those games happen? Here and there, maybe, but 40% of your games where you're scoring 40 plus points.
You can get 200, 300 yards and not get a touchdown. Look at Julio. I mean,
sure. And Dak Prescott last year, his touchdown percentage was only like 4.4%, something like it's pretty close. It was like 4.5%, but I just, because of the improved defense, I'm tempering my expectations for Dak.
Fair enough.
All right, Billy. Third on the list here is Justin Herbert. He had the third highest quarterback finish. And talk to me about Justin Herbert. Buy or sell?
Oh, sexy buy all day long here. I love Justin Herbert, and I live in Oregon, so he comes from the Ducks. I'm not necessarily a Ducks fan, but hey, I got to show support for the local kid. But I swear, these are not all buys for me here. There is a sell coming up, but Justin Herbert had a historic rookie campaign. I mean, as a matter of fact, I'll label it as the best rookie campaign of all time for a quarterback. Herbert broke just about every quarterback record in the books except one, passing yards. He finished just 39 yards shy of Andrew Luck's rookie record, and he would have easily smashed that record had he played week 1, or if Anthony Lynn didn't start kneeling the ball in the fourth quarter in that final game. Nonetheless, Herbert has the rookie passing touchdown record, completion record, the most 300-yard games by a rookie quarterback, the most 2 touchdown games by a rookie, and the list just goes on and on. Herbert is a star in the making. I'm buying a ceiling all day long here as a top 5 quarterback ceiling play, I should say, in 2021.
Oh, Billy, music to my ears, because not only are you buying, but I'm buying, and I can't be more bullish on Herbert's production going into 2021. Look, in my way too early April quarterback projected rankings, he's my quarterback 1 overall. So Justin Herbert's going as the QB8 right now in FFPC, and I think he's a great value on average going at the end of the 5th round. And he's got his returning weapons, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler. They just signed Jared Cook, who's a downfield threat. You have to respect him, even if he's 30-something years old, 33, 34. And they also saw flashes from guys like Jalen Guyton and Tyron Johnson. So, we'll throw in tight end darling Donald Parham for those truthers out there. What I am really excited about is not just the weapons and Herbert's development, but also his new offensive coordinator, Joe Lombardi. And Lombardi coached Drew Brees for like 7 seasons. And then again, from 2016 to 2020. So another 4 seasons. In between, he coached Matthew Stafford. And when he was coaching Stafford, Calvin Johnson, Golden Tate, they were all Pro Bowlers that first season. And Johnson and Tate had 1,000 receiving yards each. So I think that's a possibility for Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, these downfield threats. And look, Herbert was snubbed from a Pro Bowl his rookie season, despite putting up some of the best rookie numbers we ever seen from a quarterback. But Herbert had the number 3, 23, 62, 65, and 71st highest scoring weeks. And I think it's only up from there. So I'm very high on, very, very high. I can't get any higher on Justin Herbert. And if you can get him at a value, definitely definitely he's a quarterback I'd be targeting at this time of the season.
I'm so happy that doctor stabbed Tyrod Taylor in the lungs. I mean, we wouldn't have seen this greatness emerge had he not been, his lung punctured in warm-ups. I mean, thank you. Thank you. This was beautiful. Wonderful season. I hate to say it at, Tyrod Taylor's expense, but I mean, it was a fantastic season. It couldn't have been much better for him.
I agree there, Billy. Tyrod Taylor just seems to be the bridge quarterback of the last few years, whether it's been Baker Mayfield or Justin Herbert. And now don't know what's going to happen in Houston. We've heard about rumblings from Deshaun Watson, things like that, but Tyrod Taylor may be the starting quarterback in Houston. So we'll have to keep our ears out for any more news regarding Deshaun Watson's situation. Okay. Number 4, the 4th highest. And this was surprising. Made it in because of a receiving touchdown week 17 against the Jets. And this is Cam Newton getting the 4th highest quarterback score in a weekly amount. Billy, is he a buy or sell for 2021?
I'm going to sound like Kramer. Sell, 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 sell. I mean, he didn't even look good in 2020. He looked like pretty bad, honestly. Like in the beginning of the season, okay, great. He looked really good weeks 1 and 2. Came out with a vengeance, and then, got COVID. And we've talked about this. He, talked about COVID fog, but I mean, I'm not buying it. He fell apart. Wheels fell off. Cam had the lowest attempts per game out of all qualified quarterbacks in the advanced metrics section here on fantasy data. And he was bottom 10 in air yards, bottom 6 in deep ball attempts, bottom 11 in passing yards. I mean, gone are the days of MVP Cam Newton. I'm not even sure I'm comfortable with him as my quarterback 2 on my own fantasy roster.
I have him projected as a quarterback 2, but his floor is under the ground.
Yeah, it's benchable.
For sure. And I mean, we can go back to our previous recording, the previous live stream where I spent a lot of time talking about Cam Newton, how he just didn't look good and the stats prove it. But I've done plenty of bashing over the last few months and deservedly so. Like, he had the bad 2020, but his ceiling showed against the worst defenses. He had the 4th highest outing, week 17 against the Jets. He caught a touchdown pass, and he also had the 16th highest quarterback score earlier in the season. You mentioned that against the Seahawks. He looked like vintage Cam, moving the ball down the field. But after that, the 3rd highest that Cam finished was 88th. 88th. Like, we're talking about
that's so bad.
Like, so bad. 88th, 102nd, 126th, 218th. These are losing weeks.
It just keeps going up.
Like 218. I'm surprised that they were even fantasy data was even counting that far. But fantasy data gives you the data you need to give your argument. So here we go. We should only consider Cam a ceiling play against terrible defenses. Like, those were the only ones he was able to throw at least 200 yards against. So yeah, I'm selling here too, but maybe he's a value in daily fantasy this coming season if there's the right matchup. But I mean, Cam Newton is my projected quarterback 17, and this is mostly due to his rushing and his rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, I think we've said enough about Cam Newton. Gross. Another rushing quarterback, though, that we're a little higher on, Kyler Murray. Is Kyler Murray a buy or sell for 2021? Definite buy for me. I have to say, I underestimated Kyler coming into the league, his rookie campaign. And last year he finished as the quarterback 2 in the season for fantasy purposes. I mean, his second campaign, he finished 13th best in passing yards, 12th best or better in every single category: completion percentage, deep ball attempts, air yard accuracy, rating, and touchdowns. I mean, Murray's off to a great start in his young career, and I'm buying his ceiling play again in 2021 as a top 5 performer in the quarterback position.
Billy, I have to join you here. Kyler Murray, as long as DeAndre Hopkins is operating at top 5 wide receiver level, I think Murray's going to stay in contention here, and he's going to have that ability to reach the ceiling of top 5 quarterback on overall in an entire season. So buy for me. With the loss of Kenyon Drake, like, Drake had 10 rushing scores. He was terrible the first half of the season, but he really picked it up and was scoring a lot near the end. And there's a lot of uncertainty. Not sure whether we buy Cliff Kingsbury saying that Chase Edmonds can carry a full workload. I wonder if Murray can easily repeat his double-digit rushing touchdowns. He had 11 last season. I mean, I have Murray projected for 8, but perhaps that's conservative given how many he scored last season and the vacated touchdowns, rushing touchdowns. So we'll see what happens with Chase Edmonds. We'll see if the Arizona Cardinals draft a running back. They certainly didn't go out and sign one. So with Murray being a quarterback 3 off the FFPC boards, I've seen it. He's been taken as high as 1.10. And he's had other awesome weeks. It's not like, number 5 overall. He also had number 9, number 21, number 26, and number 44. Like him side by side with Cam Newton, like his Murray's 5th best was 44th overall. Cam Newton was 218th at his 5th best. So we're talking about a completely different player, different stages of their career, but with similar skill sets, at least running the ball. But the passing is what keeps Kyler here.
Yeah, my concern with Murray, at least last year, is the division. It's one of the toughest divisions in football. I mean, the Niners have a great defense. Seattle's defense is kind of falling apart, but I mean, look at the Rams, the number 1 defense in the NFL right now. So I just think that was my hesitation last year. I was wrong, and I will full-heartedly say that. And to see him do it versus the conference that we're in right now and the division that we're in, I think that he can pretty much do it against anybody.
Kyler is a very skilled, very talented, mobile quarterback. And if he gets in trouble, he's able to navigate it. So we'll see if the Cardinals can add more to their offensive line to protect him. He was one of the most sacked quarterbacks last season. And hopefully better route running. I mean, adding AJ Green, I hope that he'll be able to teach some of the younger wide receivers, Christian Kirk, Andy Isabella, Keyshawn Johnson, hopefully can learn a thing or two from the veteran. At least it's another target hog. So hopefully with the addition of AJ Green, that can not only help Kyler, but also maybe the wide receivers as well. All right, Billy, we looked at the top 5 scoring quarterbacks in a weekly basis, weeks 1 through 17. What's one quarterback that didn't make this list that you would expect to join for 2021?
Well, I've seen your answer here, and I have the other obvious answers. So for me, it's Lamar Jackson. In 2019, he had 9 of the top 50 top scoring weeks at the position. And even more impressive, he had 5 of the top 16. We all know Lamar Jackson had a stellar 2019, and 2020 was considered a down year based on draft capital he used to acquire him. But I expect him to land somewhere in between 2020 in 2021. But top 5 is not out of the realm of possibilities. So for me, Lamar Jackson.
I mean, with the rushing floor, and I know Sammy Watkins is not going to be the difference maker, but if they draft a wide receiver opposite Marquise Brown, look out, because
they need another big-bodied wide receiver.
We saw what Marquise Brown could do if he was heavily targeted, and that's great. And it was great for Lamar Jackson's fantasy output. We saw how during the second half of the season, he was really targeting Brown, and we saw his stats go up, both Brown's and Jackson's. There was a correlation. So if they can add another talented wide receiver, we know what Mark Andrews brings to the table, but if the wide receiver position can be addressed in the draft more than just merely a Sammy Watkins, I think that you're spot on with Lamar Jackson. Now, I'm surprised Josh Allen didn't make it in the top 5.
I am too, actually.
He was a revelation last season. He didn't have a top 5, but he did have the 6th, 14th, 17th, 25th, and 35th. So he had 5 in the top 35. Talk about a strong cluster. Like that wins a lot of fantasy championships. So Allen's currently being drafted as the quarterback 2 in FFPC, only behind Mahomes. And he's my way too early quarterback 3. So Allen, he's buoyed by the rushing touchdowns, especially. He had 8 last season, tied him with Taysom Hill for 3rd in the NFL in quarterback rushing touchdowns, and was behind only the aforementioned.
Why do you say his name? Why do you patronize me like this?
Oh, we'll talk more about Taysom Hill later. But the aforementioned Kyler and Cam Newton finished only ahead of Taysom Hill here in rushing touchdowns.
I hate hearing his name. Just okay. We're about to say it a bunch in a second.
All right, wonderful. Well, we're going to shift into, as promised, we said we'd do quarterbacks. Now we're going to do running backs. And if you had Alvin Kamara on your fantasy roster, you probably won a lot of championships. So Alvin Kamara actually had 2 of the top 5 performances. So Camaro times 2. And Billy, I'm going to go against the grain here. Alvin Kamara led me to championships last season. But I think this is the time to sell. And don't get me wrong, I love Kamara as a player. I think he has a ton left in the tank. I think he's extremely talented. And I don't think 2020 is going to be a year where he's a 0 for you. But I think this is a season where there are more questions than last year, and they need to be addressed. And even if they're addressed, I'm not confident in their outcome. In 2020, Camaro was fantasy gold. Look, he had the number 1, number 4, number 10, and number 17, and the number 61 outputs. But in weeks 11 through 14, when Taysom Hill was the starting quarterback, Kamara's ceiling was the 23rd best running back score in that 4-week period. His other scoring outputs were 38th, 95th, and 153rd. And that's just in that 4-week span. So there were 152 running backs who had higher scores than Kamara at his floor. While I project Jameis Winston to be the starter, the range of outcomes, like we have to concede that Taysom Hill could either be used as a goal line weapon, like we saw this past year. He had 8 rushing touchdowns on 87 rushes. Or that Taysom Hill beats out Jameis for the starting role. Like it's within the range of outcomes, so we have to prepare for it. If you say, oh, Jameis has it locked down, like that's naive. So I think in the scenario where Jameis is the starter, I'm still not like super optimistic about Kamara's usage. Like let's look at the most recent data sample that we have from Winston. He's not one to settle for dump-offs for running backs. In Tampa Bay in 2019, running backs had a 17% target share. Compare that to last year in New Orleans, running backs had a 27.4% target share. Kamara's going as the running back 3. I have him begrudgingly like as my way too early running back 7, and he may be fool's gold for those who are drafting him that early or even as the 1.01 coming this year.
I can't accept it. No, I can't. And I'm not going to sell here, Bradley. I love Alvin Kamara, and I have for some time. I mean, we've talked about him. I took him, round 1 his rookie year in dynasty leagues, and it was a reach. But I loved the talent coming out of college. I know there's question marks here at helm for the Saints. You touched base on it. I know the vulture is lurking. I know he's there.
You won't even say his name.
I won't say his name. I will not say his name, Bradley. He who shall not be named is who he is. But I just can't sell on the ceiling of Alvin Kamara. I mean, when he has the big playability just written all over him. In the Fantasy Data Advanced Matrix tool, Kamara is listed as the running back 1 overall in advanced metrics. He finished 2020 with 937 yards on the ground, 16 touchdowns, 5.0 yards per carry. Okay, nothing special yet.
I'll take 5.0 yards per carry.
I would too, but I'm saying like there's other running backs in that same zone, right? But 107 targets, 83 receptions, 756 yards, and another 5 scores through the air. I love the dual threat ability here. Now, I don't expect another 20-plus touchdowns. I really don't. But I do expect another spectacular fantasy season. I mean, all these stellar numbers were done with Taysom Hill in the lineup as well. You mentioned the 4 games. He had 8 starting games last year, half the season for the Saints. Now, I don't expect Taysom Hill to start. I'm actually praying he doesn't start.
So am I, just because I think all of the fantasy options, serious downgrade.
But I really do expect Winston to start here. But I do expect Peyton to get cute here and still utilize the vulture in every shape, form, and fashion. But I mean, we're still talking about what Alvin Kamara is able to do with his opportunities. He was second in the league in juke rate, 32.2%. Third in evaded tackles with 87. Fourth in breakaway runs. 7th in breakaway run rate. And fourth in point. Sound like I was like from Jersey there. And fourth in
juke rate.
Fourth.
It's a juke rate.
Yeah. I don't know. That Jersey actually came out of nowhere. But 4th in points per attempt. So I'll gladly buy or sell here, Bradley, because I think even with the reduced workload with the vulture here in New Orleans with Taysom Hill vulturing his opportunities, I still think that Alvin Kamara's ceiling and his big playability is going to far outweigh the vulturing opportunities that Taysom Hill gets.
One thing I didn't put on the outline, and that many fantasy managers forgot, though, and me included, because as I'm listening, I'm like, yeah, he's getting all of this target share. He's getting everything. Michael Thomas missed almost all of the season.
He was, but look at 2019 and 2018. He still had, what was it, 80 plus?
81 receptions for
81 for 3 years straight. So
for sure.
So still, that's a solid, even if that's the floor, that's a solid floor. So
sure, but we're not talking about floor. We're talking about ceiling here.
We are talking about ceiling, but we just talked about like his big playability with those reduced numbers. So I still think with his breakaway rate and his juke rate and everything up there, I mean, he's a human joystick and he makes people miss. And I think that when he's out there and he's able to do those type of things, even if that amount of touches and opportunity is reduced, I still think that his big playability is something you can't overlook, and it's not something that you can sell on yet.
I'll continue my sell, but I see one other point that aside from Michael Thomas, who are they going to throw to? Like Adam Troutman, Emmanuel Sanders was cut.
Yeah.
Traquan Smith.
Jared Cook is gone.
Deontay Harris. Like those are Marquez Callaway. Like the reality is we're not sure how the target share is going to shake out. Michael Thomas is coming back, but you're losing Emmanuel Sanders. I think Camaro is still extremely talented.
And he wasn't the same Michael Thomas that he was.
He wasn't.
That was written all over. You could see it in every play, in his route running. You could see it everywhere. And so I think that Camaro is the first option, whether it's on the ground or through the air in this offense. And that Michael Thomas,
Taysom Hill won't be?
No, get out of here. I don't want to hear that. Taysom Hill can go away. It's Michael Thomas is there. He's definitely the wide receiver one, but I think that in terms of weapons, Alvin Kamara is the number one weapon on this team.
I would concur with that. He's going to be the best fantasy option for the New Orleans Saints come 2021. All right, Dalvin Cook. We got to talk about Cook because he finished with the number 2 overall running back output, and he had I'm taking a buy of Dalvin Cook because I think he's a stud, and I think he's still a stud. And he had the number 2, number 7, number 34, number 48, number 55 highest scoring running back weeks in 2020. He had the highest yards per carry of his career last season. Rushed for over 95 yards in 9 of his 14 weeks played in 2020. He avoided major injuries in 2020. Yeah. He missed only 1 week because of injury, and the other week he missed week 17, family emergency. His involvement in the passing game isn't close to Alvin Kamara, but it's also not like Derrick Henry, where so Cook is 14th. He was 14th last season in running back targets and receptions, and I think it complements the Minnesota Vikings well with 2 stud receivers in Thielen and Jefferson, and then the receiving option of Cook as well. Cook is my way too early running back 3 going into 2021.
Yeah, easy buy for me here as well. If Cook is healthy, and he's arguably the best running back in the league, I think. He finished 2020 with 1,557 yards on 312 carries. Even with that amount of carries, he averaged over 5 yards per carry. He tied with Alvin Kamara with 16 touchdowns on the ground. Top 6 in juke rate at 29.8%. Second in evaded tackles with 102. Second in yards created, and 6th in breakaway runs. I mean, I love me some Dalvin Cook, so he's my running back 2 actually heading into 2021. Unofficial rankings here so far.
I love it. Yeah, total buy into Dalvin Cook. And I'm buying into this offense. I think Kirk Cousins really has figured out a way to use Jefferson, to use Thielen, and I'm excited for the emergence of tight end Tyler Conklin, and of course Irv Smith. I had to throw
can't
Conklin
quit him. He's like your Corey Davis.
Let's go. Well, look, yeah.
Bradley, the tight end whisperer.
We will see how Tyler Conklin can do, but I'm very excited about him.
Whisper in plays.
I know. We'll see what other deep cuts I can throw for our listeners and viewers as we go through the offseason. But a player I'm also buying for 2021, and that's our number 3 scoring running back in a weekly basis, and that is Aaron Jones. he's a big buy for me. He's fresh off of signing a 4-year, $48 million contract. He's my way too early running back 2 overall. He's going to get 15 carries a game, but even more so, I project Jones 4th, only behind Eckler, Christian McCaffrey, and Camara as a pass-catching threat. He is a great pass catcher, and he's Alvin Kamara light. Like, if you can't get Alvin Kamara, go after Aaron Jones if you got one of those late first-round picks. Look, the Packers lost Jamal Williams to Detroit in free agency. The vacated running back pass-catching work won't go. This is true. I am a Packers fan, but like, let's look at this. I'm going to lay out my reasons here. They lost Jamal Williams. The vacated running back pass catching work won't go to AJ Dillon. It's mostly going to go back to Aaron Jones. He's the running back 1 on Green Bay, but he's also the wide receiver 2. The only other player to catch more passes is Devontae Adams, and he's the one who has a 34% target share. So unless the Packers draft a wide receiver or maybe a pass-catching running back, yeah, we thought so last year too. But Jones had the number 3, 69, 82, 105, and 170 running back scoring weeks. Remember, he was injured for a few weeks there, and Jamal Williams, of course, always siphoned off work. But the reason why I am very bullish on Aaron Jones, he's going as the running back 10, so he's going to be a value for you, probably around the 2.02 in FFPC drafts. His price has actually decreased over the last month, even despite the extension and the Jamal Williams departure. So, which is kind of bizarre, I thought. But Aaron Rodgers, he has targeted running backs on 22% of his passes in 2020 and 22.5% in 2019. So the target share is there for the running back. Plus, he's utilized a ton around the goal line and receiving. I know AJ Dillon may get a couple more, but I mean, Jamal Williams also got some rushes and some carries around the goal line. So I think it's the financial sponsorship, and it gives me optimism that even if Green Bay adds a wide receiver, they're still going to pass a lot to Jones. I think my only concern is if they add a pass-catching running back. I think that move would hurt Jones' stock the most. I'm not worried about A.J. Dillon. Go buy yourself some Aaron Jones right now.
Did you say he was your way too early running back too?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I like Aaron Jones. And I know he finished as running back 5 last year. I'm going to sell, though, in 2020, buying into his top 5 fantasy finishes for I'm going to sell 2021, buying into his 2020 performances. I do think his passing volume will increase with Jamal gone. But I also expect the Packers to draft a wide receiver. We did expect it last year, too, so who knows? But if they do, and I do expect it to happen, that'll eat into the volume a little bit. I also expect Green Bay to protect their investment and utilize Mr. Legs, a.k.a. A.J. Dillon, on short yardage and goal line carries, which in turn limits Jones' touchdown upside. I can't get behind, your running back 2 rankings. I think it's a little too high. For me, I'd rather have like a Christian McCaffrey, Cook, Camara, Jonathan Taylor there. But I could easily see him settle in for me around, and I haven't finished my rankings. Bradley's like light years ahead of me right now. But I could see him settling in for me somewhere between 7 and 11.
So Aaron Jones finished as the wide receiver 2 or the running back 2 in 2019, and we didn't expect him to repeat, but he missed 2 games and he still finished as the running back 5. I think that over the last few years, he's been one of the most underrated running backs, and I think the narrative of him being like his work share being eaten into, he's just so talented that regardless of who eats into his timeshare, we've seen him flourish anyways. So I think that, look, I'm not going at the 102 to buy him, but what I'm saying is at the 110, you're getting a player who has top 2, top 1 upside, and you should be like buying him at that value.
No, I understand. And I like it. For me, it's a little rich, and I if you can get at that value, great. But I'm selling, Bradley. I'm selling.
Well, Billy, I should talk about a player I'm selling, a running back I'm selling, and that's Joe Mixon, our 4th highest running back scoring output in a weekly basis. Sell, sell, sell. Mixon gets me just riled up. And if any of our viewers or listeners have listened to my diatribes on Joe Mixon, go back and listen to us, please.
I was so happy to see his name on this list. I was waiting for this rant.
because your Taysom Hill is my Joe Mixon. He's just gets under my skin. So how many times do I have to tell you to sell Joe Mixon? Mixon was the hardest of sells last season. He was outside my top 20 of running backs. I was getting him nowhere, and good riddance. He only played 6 games due to injury. Look, he's healthy now, which is good. But once again, he's a hard sell. In his 6 games, Mixon, he had the number 5 overall running back output, but then his next highest, 252nd. His third highest, 273. His other 3 weeks were outside the top 300 of performances. He was mediocre, terrible at best. And that 1 week is what all fantasy managers who drafted him will justify Joe Mixon as, oh, look, his ceiling. No, Joe Mixon has extremely low floor. Look, he did have a higher target share last season, but he was inexplicably pulled for Gio Bernard or Samaje Perine when it got to red zone, and was not Joe Burrow's first look or second look when it came to the passing game. So the Bengals have received trade offers for Gio Bernard. They re-signed Samaje Perine, but if any fantasy manager wants Mixon, if you have Mixon on your team in a dynasty league and he wants him, see if you can get a premium. See if you can buy that hype, because Mixon is going as a 16th running back, but he's my way too early running back 21. And once again, outside the top 20, I'm going to get Mixon nowhere this offseason.
Yeah, I was in on Mixon last year. I'm going to admit it, and I was wrong. I was way wrong, and I'm not touching him this year, especially at his current ADP. I mean, and for this segment, I'm selling. I mean, Mixon was atrocious last year. Most of his numbers aren't even worth mentioning due to his limited number of games. But in terms of fantasy efficiency and measurements, his numbers are even worse. I mean, going off rates and percentages, so we're making sure it's relevant here across the board. He was running back 41 of 50 in breakaway rate. 30th of 50 in juke rate at 20%. He was 43rd of 50 in points per attempt at 0.84 points per attempt. That's gross. I mean, 38th of 50 in yards created per attempt. So, I mean, across the board, left and right, up and down, just horrible metrics. And I don't blame Mixon. I really don't. Like, I believe in the talent. And that's why I think that people are here defending Mixon, because the talent's there, but this O-line is a mess. And it has been for years. The Bengals O-line was ranked 30th of 32 in the league, according to PFF. And I mean, the only member of their offensive line, Jonah Williams, was the only person in Cincinnati's offensive line who recorded a blocking grade of 70 or higher in a grade that, and this was a group that was hampered not only by lack of talent, but also by injuries. 10 different players played at least 200 snaps on this offensive line for the Bengals last season. So until this O-line's fixed, like, no one's running anywhere. And watch out. I mean, Burrow, we saw what happened with Burrow last year. We talked about it. If they didn't,
he may not even start the season. He may start the season on PUP.
Yep, I think it's possible. I mean, that leg was tore up. So I think that they need to upgrade this O-line, and they need to do it not only to protect their franchise quarterback, but also just to create points.
I'm out on Mixon. I'm glad to hear you're out on Mixon. I've brought you over to the dark side.
The talent's there. The O-line is not.
Look, you've made all the points that I didn't make in my first round, and I think that Joe Mixon truthers just need to come to an understanding. Like, we need to just, let's have a talk about Joe Mixon. And I hope they listen to this live stream. I hope they listen to the podcast, because Joe Mixon is a very hard sell, and we just need to come to grips with he's not the player, and he's not on the team that's going to utilize him in the best way. And we just need to come to terms with that. Time to accept.
It is.
All right. Our last ceiling player we'll look at tonight in the running back room, Derrick Henry. And Billy, I'm really excited about Henry. I think he's a buy. He's built different. His style reminds me of Jerome Bettis, like Notre Dame product. The bus of the Steelers. Yeah, and that's the word I used. He just rumbles and pushes over defenders like a bus. And last season, Henry led the NFL in rush attempts. And I project him to do the same. He had the number 6, number 8, number 13, number 15, and number 46 top running back scores in PPR. And this dude is not a pass catcher. He had 11 of his weeks in the top 300. I don't think the voids at pass catcher for Tennessee increases Henry's pass catching involvement. Like, it's AJ Brown, maybe some Josh Reynolds, and then Anthony Ferkser. Like, there's not a lot there. So I think that it's going to be a lot of those wide receivers and tight ends. I don't think Henry's pass catching is going to go up much, despite it going up like a tad, just a tick. He did set career highs last season in receptions and targets. He's going as the running back 5, between the 1.04, 1.05. And I think right there, that's the right spot for Derrick Henry going into 2021. And he's my running back 5 in my way too early projections.
I think it's the right spot. I'm going to play devil's advocate. And I know it's hard to bet against King Henry here, but I'm going to do it. And I'm not saying don't draft him. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But all I'm saying is there's a chance he doesn't produce top 5 fantasy ceiling numbers this year. And let me tell you why. First and foremost, running the ball 300 plus times a year takes a toll on someone's body. Last year, Derrick Henry ran the ball 378 times. Josh Jacobs was 3rd in the NFL with 273. I mean, 105 times more than the number 3 most rushed running back. And I think repeating another 378 attempts this season would be difficult by any measure. Staying healthy with that volume is just hard as well. And it'll be even harder since talented pieces like Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis left the team.
Corey Davis talented?
Very talented. Bradley and I have joked off air saying AJ Brown's going to get like 200 targets this year.
So I did my projections for AJ Brown. If I'll interject here for just a second.
What did you finish it at?
I projected AJ Brown at, let me pull it up here. 1 second. The wide receiver. So I projected AJ Brown for 121 targets, which
that's actually lower than I thought.
It's lower than I thought too, but a 25% target share because who else are you going to throw to?
Okay.
Anyways.
So, but
not 200,
like
but 125.
Yeah, we joked around just because there's no one else there. But that being said, there's really honestly no one else to keep this defense honest either outside AJ Brown. So teams are going to stack this box and force this team to throw. I mean, last year on average, Henry faced 7.1 defenders in the box and faced a stack box only 31.7% of the time. I think this year we see something similar to more similar to 35 to 37% of the time we see more stacked boxes, which would be like 3rd, 4th most stacked boxes in the NFL in comparison, which in turn, I think reduces his fantasy efficiencies across the board because he had some fantastic fantasy efficiencies last year. But with stacked boxes and less talent on the receiving core, I think defenses are able to stack this box and limit Henry. And I don't care if he gets another 300 carries. It's going to be hard to reproduce those numbers. So I'm not telling you not to draft him. I'm just saying I'm saying he's not going to finish in the top 5 in terms of fantasy output performances. And I know it's a bold take here, but it's very plausible.
I think with how the roster is right now, I can definitely see it. The Tennessee Titans, though, are a team that I'm pegging to draft a wide receiver even in the 1st or 2nd round, like pretty high. I don't think that Josh Reynolds is the answer at wide receiver 2, but I mean, he's a respectable, maybe wide receiver 3 on a team. We saw that in LA, but
something I didn't throw on here as a talking point was they had like the 5th or 6th most first downs in the NFL. And
they've been an efficient team over the last 2 years.
Very efficient. And that's because they had other weapons on this offense. And if you take away some of those, chain moving plays, you're limiting the amount of times that Derrick Henry is able to run the ball. And so I think he's a talented back. I think he's a freak of nature. I think he's just an absolute beast and a monster NFL player. But I just think that we may have seen his ceiling already. And I think that we could start seeing some decline.
I hope not. I hope not for him and for many other, many fantasy managers out there listening. Yes, I still believe in Derrick Henry. Billy is offering us a little caution. Okay. We talked about some of the studs. What's one running back, Billy, that you expect to jump into the top 5 for ceiling in 2021?
Why don't you give me yours first?
Okay. Well, I mean, this is the layup. If we don't mention Christian McCaffrey, who will? I'd let Billy, but this is such a layup. Christian McCaffrey only played 3 games last season, but he finished number 11, number 35, and number 70 in running back scoring for the season in just his 3 games. Like Joe Mixon, his second highest was 215. Something like that, if I recall the stat correctly. So Christian McCaffrey and Joe Mixon are not even on the same planet. Okay. McCaffrey is going as the 1.01 FFPC drafts. He's never been taken lower as the 1.03, and that's through 17,000 mock drafts. So
many.
So there's no way that you're getting Christian McCaffrey outside the top 3 picks. He's fully healthy as far as we're aware going into 2021. You got to take your shot. If you've got that top pick, Christian McCaffrey is going to put up 900 and 600, and that's conservative, I think. So, Christian McCaffrey, that's who I expect to jump into the top 5 for 2021. I know it's a layup, but we got to put him out there.
You're such a cheater. I mean, you took Josh Allen and Christian McCaffrey. I mean, come on. Let's get bold here. I refuse to bend the knee here on the easy route, Bradley. I refuse.
Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to take the kneel down.
Hand off.
Someone's got to Tim Boyle this live stream.
Yeah. My pick, and I guess this is not, out of the ordinary, but my pick to finish in the top 5 is Nick Chubb.
Love it.
He was 7th in the league in rushing yards, 4th overall in touchdowns, despite only playing 12 games. He led the league in juke rate, 37.9%, 15% greater than Alvin Kamara. He finished 2nd in the league in breakaway rate at 7.4. All while facing a league 12th most stacked boxes of 8 or more defenders on 28.9% of his carries. Chubb is the most pure runner in the NFL. I've been saying this for years, and is always a threat to score. I just don't think Chubb will hit top 5 for ceiling play, but I expect it in 2021.
See, I've loved Chubb too since the Browns drafted him, and he won me some fantasy championships way back his rookie year when I slyly traded TJ Yeldon and Carlos Hyde the day that Hyde was traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I traded both of them, who were at that time running back 2s, for Travis Kelce in one of my leagues. And so I had Nick Chubb on the bench, who became a running back 1 the rest of the season, and Travis Kelce. So Chubb will always be endeared to me. And I think the only thing holding Chubb back is Kareem Hunt. Like his existence. Kareem Hunt was a top 12 running back.
They can commingle. They can coexist. I mean, we've seen this offense has been able to produce 2 top 20 running backs in this system. I mean, Stefanski loves 12 personnel. They're running the ball. They're playing a bunch of schemes, and they're getting the ball to these talented players, and that's what they do. And we still have yet to see what happens with Odell Beckham. Is he returning? Is he going to be traded in camp? I mean, there's still a lot of unanswered questions in this offense.
That's true. I'm in the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio right now, just talking with some Browns fans, and many of them expect Beckham to be traded. They don't like him around here. And one of the people I was talking to suggested they even trade Beckham to the Packers because Beckham, I think he has like 3 years left on his deal, but the only year that's guaranteed is 2021. And the only cap hit that he has is for 2021. So if the Browns trade him, sure, they're eating cap, but they have enough cap space to handle it. So if that's going to free up the Browns offense, and they actually looked pretty good without Beckham, it's possible.
They looked better without Beckham. They really did. They played more as a football team. It wasn't a selfish play. It was a team collaboration and trying to be better for the good of the team.
Rashard Higgins does that for your team, and I really love Higgins as a sleeper going into this year.
Yeah, it's a good call. I would hope that Odell Beckham does not come back to the Browns just for the running game purpose, as well as the DPJ shares I have in Dynasty. But that's just me being selfish. I mean,
Higgins was one of the top wide receivers in fantasy points per touch. You know, he was so dynamic and so I would expect, he was very efficient. Love Rashard Higgins. So shout out Higgins. And there we go.
Well, that's a wrap, folks. Thanks you for joining the Fantasy Football Fanalist Show presented by Fantasy Data. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Data NFL, at FF Fanalists, at FF Musio, and at FF Stalder. If you'd like the show, make sure to subscribe. Just click the little Fantasy Data YouTube button down here at the end of the show. And also you can subscribe to us on our Twitch channels. It'll give you the most up-to-date news, recordings, and information. We'll see you all back here next Friday. Thanks for tuning in, and good night.